Welcome to the channel, everyone. This is video 9 in the build series where we're building out a Mercedes Sprinter 3500 170 extended camper van. Today we'll walk through how to frame out the inside of the van to get it ready for finished walls and ceiling. It's pretty straightforward. You just attach the furring strips to the van support beams to give you something to attach the finished walls to. So I'll walk you through 5 tips to show you how to do this quickly and efficiently, including one tool that's a must-have if you're going to be using plus nuts or rivet nuts. This tool is quite literally 10 times faster than what I started using, so stay tuned for that. So first things first, here's a list of what you'll need. You'll need 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood, and I'll explain more about that in a minute. Self-tapping metal screws. I use these self-drilling metal stud screws, which I bought at Menards. Plus nuts and plus nut bolts also. And just a note here, I use plus nuts instead of riv nuts or rivet nuts. Either will work fine, but I found that the plus nuts have a bigger lip or a bigger edge on them, so they have more material to catch the metal, and so it just feels more secure to me. So I also use stainless steel 1/4-20 bolts to go into the plus nuts, and I will say I tried a couple of different options for plus nuts. I found some to be pretty poor quality. The nut would deform and not grab correctly, so I had to cut them out a few times. I'll put the link for the good ones that I used in the description below, along with links to the other material and tools that I used also. You'll also need some kind of adhesive. I use PL marine sealant between the boards and the ribs of the van to reduce the squeaks and improve the strength. This stuff is a little expensive, but you don't need a lot of it, and it's crazy strong and flexible when it dries, which is good for your van to reduce the impact of the vibration and the bumps as you go down the road. It's also good in extreme temperatures, which you can get in a van if it's parked in the sun for a period of time. Okay, so here we go. First tip. Use Baltic birch plywood as your framing material. I've used a few types of framing material in the past, and when I've used pine furring strips in the past, they've seemed to split pretty easily. So for this build, I used 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood cut into strips. I found Baltic birch is stronger than normal plywood and much less susceptible to warping. And the quality of Baltic birch plywood in general is great. The voids in each individual sheet of the plywood are almost non-existent compared to regular plywood. Now, you might have to go to a lumber yard for Baltic birch, but when you do, you'll see the quality is far above what you'll find at a Lowe's or Home Depot. There's nothing wrong with that. It's got its purpose as well, right, for different applications. But for this, I found the Baltic birch is great. Tip number 2, where and how to install. So this next tip is about the best order that I've found to install the framing. So you can see there are horizontal and vertical framing strips. I found it best to start with the horizontal pieces first and do them completely front to back, and then connect them with vertical strips. I found that if you do the vertical strips first and then connect them with the horizontal strips, that the pieces tend to be uneven. The vertical strips tend to stick out, and this makes it tough when putting the finished wall on. So start with the horizontal pieces, front to back, like I said, and then connect them with the vertical pieces. You may still have to shim behind some of them, depending on what's happening with the van ribs, and that's okay. You want the framing strip surfaces to be flush so the finished wall material goes on nice and flat. And just a note here, the finished wall material for this van is plywood panels, right? So this is different than how I did my previous van, where I used shiplap for the finished wall boards. In that case, I attached my vertical pieces directly over the top of the horizontal pieces, so I could then attach each shiplap piece horizontally from the ceiling to the floor. So just wanted to show the difference there. You might want to think about depending on the finished material that you're using. Also, be sure to leave space where you have any trim to put back. So you can see here I left a space for my B-pillar trim to go back in. Now, once the walls are done, move on to the ceiling and attach framing to the ribs going across the ceiling. Okay, tip number 3, how to attach. So as mentioned, I used screws, plus nuts, and PL marine sealant or adhesive. I would put the sealant onto the van ribs first, of course, and then attach the boards with the screws and plus nuts. I felt the plus nuts were very secure, so I typically would put these in every few feet and then come along after in between and put the self-tapping screws in for added strength. When using plus nuts and bolts, you have to do a few things to the birch strips for fit. So I would drill holes through the framing strip and then use a countersink bit to burrow out so the bolt head would sit flush with the framing strip when installed. So this also allows the finished wall material to sit flat. Tip number 4, get a pneumatic plus nut or rivet nut drill tool if you can. So I started with a manual tool, as you can see here, which it worked fine, but it just takes a while. It takes a long time. It's a lot of screwing in and unscrewing. Halfway through, I decided I needed to speed up the process, so I bought this Kiaru pneumatic rivet nut gun. It comes with the pneumatic gun itself and several sizes of heads as well, if you have several different sizes of riv nuts or plus nuts that you want to use. Like I said, this likely sped up the installation by 10 times, so the thing is fantastic. It's so much easier and quicker. You just hand tighten a plus nut onto the end of the tool, put it in the hole, squeeze the trigger until you hear the tool kind of bog down a little bit, and that's when you know it's installed. And then just press the reverse button and the tool backs right out with the plus nut installed. It's pretty slick. Again, this will save loads of time. I would highly recommend this if you already have an air compressor and if you're going to be using plus nuts or rib nuts for the installation. I do have a link in the description for this tool and the plus nuts. Okay, tip number 5, ensure you have something for the wall ceiling corners. For this build, as mentioned, I used 1/4-inch Baltic birch for the wall and the ceiling panels actually. This is a natural wood and it's pretty thin, right, at 1/4 inch. So it could tend to not be totally straight as you look down the line where the wall and the ceiling come together. So make sure there's something in the corners to force that edge to be straight. For this build, I used corner brackets from Timber Van Kits. They call them structural assembly for sprinter vans. That's the product name. They have other van types also, but these are the brackets that run basically from the front, from the cab to the rear doors that get put in the corner where the wall and the ceiling join. The idea is that these will hold the ceiling and the wall panel edges straight to give you that perfect finished edge when you're done. It does work. One drawback is since the brackets are metal, it's not the easiest thing to screw into if you want to put trim up. So keep that in mind if you plan to use these. And that's it. Those are my 5 tips for framing out your camper van project. It's not terribly complicated, and if you spend the time to make sure everything is flat and even, you should be in good shape when ready to put the finished walls in. So let me know if you have questions or comments, and as always, like and subscribe and turn on notifications as I have several more build videos we're working on, which will be released soon. Thanks for watching.